On a personal level, at this point, I would say I'm a little tired of the internet. The next company that I do, one of the things that I think would be important is that it has some long-term beneficial effect.
Es ist dem Feind gelungen, die Front in breiter Formation zu durchbrechen. Im Süden hat der Gegner Zossen genommen und stößt auf Stahnsdorf vor.
It's nice to have a few cool assets, like the McLaren plane, a couple of things.
Mit dem Angriff Steiners wird das alles in Ordnung kommen.
Let's get ready to grumble!
So with everyone focused on Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter for $44 billion, we have gotten lost in how all these things play together, because what you've got is people that are focused on this concept of free speech, concept of, everybody says whatever's on their mind. They think that this is really what is at stake here. This is the core factor here. But in reality, what you've got is yet again another oligarch. One more oligarch on the grand global stage dictating to the world how policy should be. Because once again, money rules. Money rules, and the rest of us just sort of fall in line and accept whatever comes our way. But I want to take us back to a time not too terribly long ago, right after World War II. World War II, really important period of time, because at this moment we defeated Nazi Germany, and we defeated the powers of fascism, all the while setting up a Cold War behind the scenes through China, all the while working to eliminate the potential for Uncle Joe to spread communism throughout the world. So what did we do? We created things like NATO. We created things like the IMF, the World Bank, the WTO. We created the Peace Corps. We created so many of these identities, these non-government organizations that were intended to keep communism out of these developing nations. And originally, the IMF and groups like that were set out to create friendly capitalist countries that would be open to doing free market-based type things. And in the beginning, some of these things actually happened because capitalism hadn't reached the point where it is today. The IMF now sinks its teeth into any country it can with the express purpose of extraction for whomever. In this case, it's an arm of U.S. imperialism. So what is the big deal anyway? Well, the whole point of this period of time was to privatize the world, to literally strip the world of any kind of public space, and a mass scale free market privatization to compete and to counter communism. So this mindset right here, this mindset really, really explains a lot of things, because what happened? If you go back to the Treaty of Versailles from World War I, the Treaty of Versailles did something horrible. The Treaty of Versailles was so punitive, so wicked, so cruel, that it beat the German people, not just their government, but the people, down to the point where they were desperate, down to the point where they had nothing to lose. And all of a sudden, a charismatic leader comes out of the shadows and says, I can make Germany great again. I can restore the Aryan race. I can restore us to greatness. And so as industry fell apart in Germany, as everything fell apart in Germany, Hitler was able to take over without any problem at all. I mean, yes, there was some resistance, but ultimately in the end, the idea of a hero, a knight coming in to save the day under horrible economic conditions, under the oppressive regime of the Treaty of Versailles, Hitler rose to power. And we're seeing this happen around the world, actually. The rise of fascism has never been greater. And why is that? because you have this neoliberal project, the neoliberal project that goes back to World War II and the end of World War II, as the United States tried to advance its interests through neoliberalization, through this neoliberal project. Now, you look at what happened in the United States with the rise of Donald Trump, and you look what happens with Bolsonaro, and you look what happens all around the world, the rise of fascism, soft fascism, Nazism is coming back. Because the more things change, the more they stay the same. The more we wash, the more we rinse, the more we repeat. And how does this have to deal with Elon Musk, a guy who is rich beyond compare, the richest man in the world by many measures, and a man with incredible power, a man who owns Tesla, who started out with PayPal, and ultimately a guy who understands technology, and a guy who speaks crypto, and a guy who is the libertarian messiah, the ultimate achievement in Ayn Rand objectivist society, the maker of all things, the dictator of all rules. He uses the terms of the common man like freedom of speech because people are sick to death of neoliberalism crushing them, of identity politics crushing them, and ultimately paving the way for these fascists to rise up. See, when people have nothing left, when you've squeezed the life out of them, when you've spent all your time hoping and hyping messages, maybe aren't quite right. Maybe you exaggerate, maybe you tell a story that ultimately gives just enough of a wiggle room for the quote-unquote bad guys to slip in and say, see, it didn't work. See, it's wrong. See, it's false. I can show you the way. And this has happened throughout history. Elon Musk may be the richest man in the world, but Elon Musk is a garden variety oligarch. The difference is we're in the tech age, and we need a tech age oligarch to be that hero that all the libertarians point to and say, I could be him someday. I could be him someday. And so while we're looking at the crushing power that neoliberalism has, which is a stepsister or stepbrother or kissing cousin of fascism, we realize that fascism is created on the backs of neoliberalism. Neoliberalism says there is no alternatives. Neoliberalism is mass privatization. It's also mass government control and oppression and creating of scapegoats. So ultimately, Elon Musk is your white knight for the quote-unquote civil libertarian, for the guy who says, I'm all for free speech. And yet this same guy went out of his way to destroy a Tesla whistleblower for saying things about the company that he didn't like. Elon Musk has done so many things that are petulant and just absolutely ridiculous. And yet, because he says the right things, because what has happened? The necessary conditions are there. Facebook algorithms have crushed the value of Facebook. You can't even post an article on Facebook without a fact checker telling you it's wrong, without somebody saying it violates the terms of service, without somebody crushing your free speech. Now remember, free speech that's in the Constitution isn't about private sector. It's about the government. And the government has very different definition of what free speech is. And as you look, since Elon Musk has purchased Twitter, the EU has told him in no uncertain terms You will follow our speech patterns, our speech guidelines, or you will be fined heavily, or Twitter will be just straight up banned. So you've got a hero. He's going to fight the bad guys, but he's one of the bad guys. You understand? He's just a different version of the same bad guy. In this case, though, he is the natural progression from the censorship of the neoliberal world, of the idpol world. Now, mind you, just remember, when you put a pillow over someone's mouth, now, I'm not talking about fake news. I'm not talking about lies and propaganda. Maybe I am even talking about some of that. But when you put a pillow over the mouth of people who say things that you just simply don't like, you are creating a ticking time bomb. No one wants to be silenced, even if what they're saying is absolutely repulsive.
When any force weakens the interlocked blocks of our political and economic freedoms, as good citizens, we must be quick to use the tools our Constitution gives us.
But there comes a point, whose issue are you holding up? Who do you care about? Who is the aggrieved? Is it the young trans person that's being crushed and bashed by bigots and TERFs? Is it the young gay person who's being outed? Is it some family that maybe doesn't believe in contraception? Is it somebody who went and got an abortion? Where does free speech end? Who are we protecting? How are we protecting them? Sexual predators, pedophiles, people who are putting out news that is inflammatory, that is blatantly a lie, that creates violence. Who are we protecting? Ultimately, there are very, very complicated questions about where free speech begins and where it ends. If you're in a movie theater and you yell fire and people get trampled and stepped on and killed, you incited that violence. You incited that. And that's illegal. And I think most people would agree with that. If you go out on Twitter and you sit there and you dox somebody, you find out information about them and you use it to get them fired, like Elon Musk has done, would you consider that free speech, protecting free speech? What would you consider that? The questions of free speech are always varied. But in this digital world, we've got even more concerns than that. We've got hackers. We've got text messages that are not encrypted. We've also got pseudonyms that we use on Twitter that protect the voices of those people who are marginalized, who could be killed for speaking out, especially in foreign countries where speech is truly clamped down on even more. At what point does free speech stop become free speech and starts becoming a weapon? These are all questions that are out there that people, good people, not bad people, good people, could have very different definitions of and have very different motivations for feeling what they feel. But we all suffer from encryption, and we've all suffered from these very, very clandestine algorithms that have kept us from hearing about information that we maybe would have wanted to hear about, from getting our message out, from taking our business on these platforms and earning a living. Ultimately, in the end, it becomes a question of public ownership or private ownership. It's not about whether Elon Musk is an oligarch and whether you dislike his libertarianism, which I despise. It's really more a question of public-private ownership. What is this? What is it? And it's not just Twitter, because Twitter is just one of many social media platforms. The question becomes, once these things become a part of the fabric of society, who owns your personal information? Who owns the things you say and do on there? Should Elon Musk or any other oligarch be able to review your comments? Should they be able to read your texts? Who owns your posts? And if you think about it, all the spam bots and all the fake, ads for, hey, PlayStation for $50 today only, buy here. Yeah, sure, some people are smart enough not to click the damn thing. But many are like, oh my God, an opportunity, click. And voila, their identity is stolen. Their life is stolen. Privacy concerns are very freaking real. So is it really about Elon Musk? I think it really comes down to the fact that we have heroes, we have fascism, and we have this concept of public and private. At this stage of capitalism, we are staring down the barrel of money manager capitalism. We're looking at an investment community. We're looking at portfolios. We're not looking at people creating things any longer. We're looking at an economy where the haves get exponentially more and the have-nots continually get deprived of basic needs. It may feel really good to own Elon Musk, who once went to the UN and said, hey, if you say that it's so cheap to solve world hunger, give me a detailed plan and I'll fix it. Well, the UN gave him a detailed plan and he did bupkis. Same thing when he talked about the water pipes in Flint, Michigan, talking about fresh water. Gave him some filters. He didn't do what he said, right? Big deal, though. This owning of Elon Musk is all fine and well, but it doesn't address the fundamental problem. When you have private property that private interests can control and dominate, they become bigger than the government. They end up by default owning you. They become by default your feudal lord. They become by default the most influential people in the world. And when we look at how people get rich in this country, and we look at how they were able to acquire a company for $44 billion while owning Tesla and SpaceX, going to the moon, how is that even possible? We have given up the fight that generations have fought against private property, against privatization, against the neoliberal project that we see, dating back to before Marx. In his treatise, Capital, which is 3 volumes, by the way, he lays it out in spades. Lenin, he lays it out in spades. We have known forever about global finance capital, and we've seen it executed flawlessly by the IMF, World Bank, and World Trade Organizations. Now, Elon Musk has tremendous needs in China. His business plans extend way out there. What is Elon Musk going to do when he has control over this much information? Would he suddenly be able to use that information to facilitate business deals with foreign countries? Would he be able to give up American information, your private information, for gain? How would he leverage that? Could he use it, in fact, to force the hand of business partners to know what they said behind the scenes, to read their messages and use that against them, to force them to do certain business? These are all questions. They're questions because we don't have governments that are strong enough and willing to fight back, because these governments are captured. The neoliberal project, going back to World War II, which was created in large part to stop the spread of communism, is alive and well. And it isn't going anywhere. In fact, it's taking great pains to strip us of more and more of our public space, to make life that much more precarious for each of us. But why would you focus only on Elon Musk now? Why is Twitter suddenly, the thing? Because the liberals, the ideologically driven centrists who are neoliberal all the way, the people that are the big business lovers, the people that are Wall Street whores on the left, the pseudo left, not the real left, because that's not left. The Bidens of the world, not left. Those individuals suddenly realize that their ideological twin, because we're talking about, honest to God, the same exact privatization scam. The difference is the absolutist in the libertarian space of not wanting a government to be able to do anything, of wanting free markets to reign supreme, to allow individuals to do whatever the hell they want, no matter who it hurts. That's what's at stake here. And picking on Elon Musk in this case, while he's a piece of shit and has done more bullshit in his life to get that money that has probably caused thousands of people to have problems. Elon Musk is not your problem. He's a symptom. The real focus is what happened with the neoliberal project. Neoliberalism creates fascists. As you watch the neoliberal project try to raise interest rates, and you watch people jump out of crypto and back into bonds again, as you watch people literally flailing about, trying to figure out how this world is going to impact them, people that don't have the knowledge or the wherewithal to survive these kinds of major shifts. That's where the real war is here. It's not Elon Musk. We need nationalized communications. We need nationalized internet. We need nationalized and net neutrality. We need nationalized banks. We need nationalized, services, period. Healthcare, all the above. Postal service, get rid of that private element to it. Nationalize it. But ultimately, as long as neoliberals continue to do what neoliberals do, which is stifle speech, create enemies, beat those straw man enemies up, turn people into rabid haters of said enemy, there will always be the seeds of fascism brewing, creeping up, waiting to show their ugly head. Whenever you demonize and dehumanize people, you create a scenario where they look for somebody that doesn't dehumanize and doesn't hate them. And that's when the Elon Musks of the world come to the rescue. If you want to look and see who's to blame, look no further than the people that pushed you to vote for Hillary. Look no further than the people that pushed you to vote for Biden. It's not to say you should have voted for Trump, and it's not to say you should have voted for Trump the last time either. It's to say that instead of electing people that represent the people, they continue to push forward and allow the neoliberal project to select the candidate that they wanted. I've said repeatedly that in no way, shape, or form did anyone want Kamala Harris, and yet there she is, your vice president. I said Joe Biden was asleep through half of the primaries. And it wasn't until Clyburn and gang came in and donned him King Biden that Biden even became a viable candidate. Biden was losing everything already himself in the primaries. But when you take away the objective free election, when you take away any sense of the people having a say-so, when everything is done by the elite, you create blowback. And that is what's fueling the rise of fascism. Bad economics, terrible conditions for regular people, strapping debt, inflation. This is what happened in Weimar Germany. Will it happen here? One can only suspect. As you watch Joe Manchin literally suddenly becoming one of the most popular politicians out there. Why? Because Joe Manchin stood up to Joe Biden. But just because he stood up to Joe Biden doesn't make Joe Manchin a good man. It's just more of needing a hero to stand up against neoliberalism. And if that pushes you to fascism, if that pushes you to bad science, if that pushes you to more anarcho-capitalism, if it pushes you to privatizing healthcare more, if it pushes you to making life harder for regular people, then that's exactly what you're going to do. And that's what you're going to get. So Elon Musk comes out and says he's going to make Twitter speech friendly, free speech friendly. Now, with the exception of telling someone to die or something like that, most people aren't getting censored on Twitter for anything other than literally berating and hating somebody. So the question becomes, who exactly are we looking for free speech for? Is it that we're trying to give fascists a platform once again to come chasing people, trolling people, doxing people? What exactly is Elon Musk's end game here? I think it's pretty obvious that the gods of Twitter before Elon Musk, they may have thought, well, we'll put a poison pill out there to prevent him from buying it by flooding the market with more shares so he can't ever buy enough. But eventually, they and the existing investors capitulated and handed over Twitter for $44 billion. There was no gun to their head. They didn't have to. But in the end, greed won. Will Elon Musk make Twitter better? That's to be determined. Nobody knows. But the real story here is, why is it that we don't understand that privatization, that private ownership, that these gods of free enterprise are not our heroes? They're leeches sucking everything away from us. Elon Musk didn't build SpaceX on his own ingenuity. Elon Musk got billions in subsidies from the federal government. Elon Musk's every ingenious idea were fully funded at some level and subsidized by the federal government. So his entire concept of free markets, his entire concept of getting rid of government is a lie. There is no such thing as a free market without the government. Because who arbiters issues? Does Elon Musk just go out there with a gun and start fighting? No, he goes to court. Who does court? That would be government. So on so many levels, the real story is about private ownership and what that means, what private ownership really means, and why so many in the history of our society, going back to the 1800s and beyond, have fought against private property, have fought against capitalism, have fought against this oligarch class, imperialism, neoliberalism, you must understand that Elon Musk is not a guy wearing a cape. He's simply caping for capital. He's got goals. He's got ambitions. Those ambitions and goals were facilitated by third way politics that allowed him to get richer and richer and richer without any clawback, without any regulation, without any kind of meaningful way of ensuring that the public purpose was taken care of. Because under neoliberalism and under libertarian ideology, there is no such thing as the public purpose. There's only private property. And that, my friends, is a story of Twitter. Elon Musk has purchased Twitter because it's now his private property. If you don't like it, then that's the battle you need to be fighting. The battle between capital and labor, between private and public. Not just because he is ideologically not your friend. And he isn't.
And still